and engaging in mixed methods research to develop these kind of cross-cultural frameworks, which I think many of the panelists and many of you participants also are already kind of actively engaging with that. Another key takeaway is the importance of ethical research and participatory research. We had a whole discussion yesterday about ethics. Today in the panel, Rose McDermott brought up a lot of ethical considerations that we need to take into account, and that we need to go kind of beyond just what the IRB expects of us, and to really consider the ways that we are protecting both the respondents or the participants in our studies, as well as the enumerators and the implementers, and weigh the benefits and costs of asking about violence and trauma with these groups. Another key point that's also related to engagement with the community is dissemination, being able to actually go back to the communities we study and work with and disseminate what we've learned. Betsy gave a great example of Jim Scott, who took his book actually back to the community and had them read it and see if it was legible. And I think that's super important because we don't want to just be extractive in the work that we do. Working with local mental health professionals and organizations whenever possible is another key point with engaging with the community. Some other key takeaways are just, we often think about the negative ramifications of trauma, but there are also positive outcomes of experiencing trauma, like resilience, strength, survival, and growth, that we could start to think about as potential outcomes to measure and to study. Another is justice, thinking about the link between trauma and justice. Tim talks about it just a little bit, about thinking about how do you even implement something like a transitional justice court in these contexts, and what does it look like? And yesterday, earlier today, Mike Nikenchuk said, healed people pursue merciful justice. And yesterday, Melanie Greenberg described healing and justice as an ecosystem, and how important it is to think about justice when we're working with folks who have experienced trauma. And then thinking harder about whether trauma and PTSD have become too much of buzzwords, instead of focusing on the relational and evidence-based approaches to helping individuals heal from their experiences and what they actually are experiencing their symptoms, and thinking about maybe not just kind of only using these terms and using them as buzzwords, instead of really focusing on what individuals have actually experienced. And then finally, what's really clear, and Biz and I and Cecilia are so happy with how many people have expressed interest in this, how all of the panelists are folks that are doing such amazing work, and I think the sheer number of participants and the amount of interest in this conference demonstrates that these conversations between practitioners, academics from diverse disciplines was needed, and we hope to be able to facilitate a continued conversation for the future. And so to that end, I want to thank, first of all, the IGCC for the funding, the generous funding for this conference that was supposed to happen in person last year. But I'm actually really grateful that it happened online, because we were able to have so much diverse participation, folks from across the globe, folks that were calling in from Jordan. Angie is in the middle of the night in Kenya right now, and so I'm grateful that we were able to do this. Special thanks to all of the panelists who took the time to participate and to give us some really amazing insights. To all of you participants who have asked amazing questions and have just been really, you've been so cooperative in this virtual environment, and run with our different formats than we traditionally do with academic panels. And so I want to thank all of you, and of course to my co-hosts, Biz and Cecilia, for helping organize this conference. As far as outcomes, oh, and yes, sorry, the wonderful discussants, the graduate students discussants who were moderating all of our panels, did amazing jobs, had wonderful questions that were really great. And finally, to our 3 undergraduate assistants, Jay Miguel, Hassan, and Siwar, who kept things flowing with the implementation of this conference, and who have done amazing research for us as well. So I thank you. And then finally, I was going to say some outcomes that we expect to have from this conference. So as I mentioned, we will upload and share all the recordings and resources. We'll seek slides from all of the panelists that we'll be able to share. We will also be writing an IGCC policy brief and potentially other outputs on political violence at a glance, which is a very popular blog. So keep an eye out for those once they come through. And then we hope to host this conference in years to come, considering the overwhelming attendance and support, potentially virtually or in person. So do continue to follow the HSVT Twitter account. I hope that folks are able to keep in touch, that some fruitful collaborations potentially have even been born out of this conference. So thank you again.
Thank you.